welcome to Supercharged episode 185. I'm Adam Dotches.
And I'm Tommy Houghton.
And today we're talking about kids.
Yes, kids in the most appropriate way possible.
Yeah, yes, of course. Kids and technology, actually, it's, I guess, we were trying to think of a way to work in the Nintendo Labo into a conversation and all of that, and this is kind of what came of it. So we're going to have that discussion because we have a lot of topics that we do want to cover, and we haven't been able to do those because we're waiting for some guests. We're going to be talking to the creator of Replica. We're going to be talking to, hopefully, YouTube. I'm still working on that one. Someone from Space
Wait,
10.
to YouTube itself?
Yeah, if only.
Yeah.
I would love to talk to the algorithm. Who else I already forgot. We have someone to talk about universal basic income, hopefully in February when he gets to Los Angeles. And I don't remember the others now. Oh, modular robotics. That's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
We have a lot on the pipeline, and so there have been a lot of shows that I'm really looking forward to doing. We also got to get Ben back on because his game is in beta, and that's going to be coming out. February is going to be busy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
February is when his game is released officially, right?
Yeah, middle of February I saw. Mm. But it's fun. I'm halfway through it, I think.
Yeah, and then I guess our guest on Awkward this week, we want to also have on here because she's into a lot of VR and immersive technology that I think centers more around what you do, Tommy. But
yes, that's how I met Juliet. She was a reporter at LAist, but does a lot of freelance reporting, and so she actually also lives 2 blocks from Stash House.
Oh, and I was just talking to someone from Meta the other day. So
nice.
We should do that. They just did a deal with Dell.
Yes.
Which I didn't know about, but
I saw that.
Now I do. Which is funny because when we talked about Meta, like, I don't remember, it must have been 2016, and I don't think you were here yet. I was talking about how I just got the feeling that they wanted Apple to buy them. And Dell makes more sense to me to some degree.
In what way?
Well, in the sense that, like, if you think about their technology and their product, like, Dell seems like a better fit because Apple's very much about proprietary stuff, and Meta is built out of a lot of components that are pretty, I guess, accessible.
Oh, that makes sense.
In the sense that, like, the same way like the Rift would be, but there's not, from what I could tell and what other people I was with at the demos could tell, a lot of the stuff in the initial headsets were very, it would be hard to, like, claim, I guess, what is it, patent on a lot of the technology because it was sourced components, which makes sense.
Sure. But
it puts them in a kind of a complicated situation in that way. And the technology wasn't great at the time. There were a lot of flaws. It wasn't ready to go. What everyone was led to believe about how Meta was functioning at the time was a lot better. And it was weird because legitimate, real, tech journalists who used it were saying great things about it.
Well, I think it's part of it is crafting a slick demo that can trick people into thinking, oh, this is a good product. But in reality, it's a very tightly controlled thing that just shows like a curated view of what has been built as opposed to...
It also really made me appreciate the HoloLens's motion tracking, though, because it was so jittery.
Yeah.
I was really surprised by how problematic it was. But presumably, they've made some progress since that day,
I would hope.
And so I said then, like, despite all the criticism, I was rooting for them. I want them to do well. As much as I love how Microsoft is handling the HoloLens, it's not going to be a good thing if there's no real competition. And now we also have actually seen what Magic Leap looks like, which is impressive, honestly. Like, it seemed like that was going in the garbage.
Yeah, it felt like vaporware for a while.
Yeah.
And it still could be, but...
Yeah, but I mean, the idea of, like, having, like, this little clip-on disc and these goggles that are diminutive compared to a VR headset, that's just...
Well, I can't wait till we just like shooting lasers into our eyes, That's the future.
In a sense, that's what it is.
I just want the direct I don't want like some half-assed thing. I want direct lasers in the eyes now.
Well, it's retinal projection,
Yeah.
So it's I mean, it's not. I guess if you want the literal lasers in the eyes, that's a different story.
It is.
But we could go back to Laser Fit, and they have safe eye lasers.
That's right. You can just shoot people in the eye all day.
Actually, I did go back on Tuesday.
Yes, how was it?
It was good. I ran into Abel.
Oh, nice.
So we played together. He stayed for an extra game.
Nice.
And he's a sniper. I didn't realize that. He's impossible to get.
He is very good at sniping.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing at Philip's level, or at least whatever level Philip was playing at.
When he and I first went, and Abel's a mutual friend, it's actually kind of how we met. But when Abel, he lives really close to there, and so he and I were walking around and saw it there, and it's like, oh, that looks interesting. And so he invited me to go play, and I don't believe he didn't hide it, but he didn't advertise that he goes a lot. So
when I asked him about it, he didn't seem to. He was like, "Oh, I've been going to another gym more, but yeah, I come here when I can because it's right nearby."
So I go, and he's like, "Yeah, I've done it a few times." I mean, he kicked my ass really badly, and he's like, he knew what he was doing. It's clear he'd played a lot, and it's funny because he and Philippe, who was the guest last year, Philip.
I was. It's like he's got to be Philippe.
Yeah.
But he always says Philip, so I think they're like trying to
Americanize it.
Yeah, Americanize themselves.
Yeah,
more.
Philip Robert as opposed to like Philippe Aubert.
Yeah.
So they basically was between the two of them, and Philippe was actually like getting really serious about usually he just sits there and like kind of half-asses like the game because no one can even compete with him. But he and Abel were like going back and forth, so it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and we had a family playing with us, and they weren't doing anything. So I was like me in third, comfortable third, Abel and Philippe like battling for the top.
I got second place and third place and we were playing with a group. So I wanted to say, not to brag or anything, because it's not like I did great. I was still like half the points of Abel, and Philip or Philippe or Tarzan. He has a lot of names, I guess.
Yeah.
But I went from like 16 points a game to 45-ish. I think it averaged around there. And so I have to say they were right, and I was wrong. I did get better a lot faster than I thought. It took to the 5th game instead of the 70th game. So,
but you got there.
I have to correct that. They were correct about that. The interesting thing though that I realized about Laser Fit, before we move on to children, was that they were talking about, what does Philip call his method of playing? Because Lucy's the sniper and he's like the
ranger.
The ranger. That's what I
think so. Yeah.
So I was thinking I'd be more like that, and I wouldn't be able to snipe because my aim is bad because my hands I can't keep my hands still even if I'm balancing. Everyone's always like, yeah, just hold it like this. If you're watching the video, you can see what I'm doing. And I can, holding my hands together, and that doesn't really help me very much. It helps a little, but it's not enough. Like when I get really close to someone, I can't hit them. Mm-hmm. I have to be be like 4 feet away. So if someone gets close to me, then I'm screwed. So I guess when we play someday, Tommy,
I'll make sure to stay close.
Yeah, you know how to cause a problem. But I can hit people. I can hit people from like semi close and also from really far. I can hit the gun if I'm closer, but I hit the shoulders really well. Mm-hmm. Unless it's a woman with longer hair. In which case, sometimes that just obscures it. There's this one woman who was playing with us who I just couldn't hit her on the shoulders, but I could hit her close up because she was not good at defending herself in that regard. So it was kind of figuring out who's who. It was really interesting to
you learn strategies and
you learn new stuff. And since the game is evolving too, it's it's like it might not last forever because Philip was saying we brought Paul, who's been on the show before, if anyone remembers Paul Shaw. For fitness and economic advice, but he is also co-host Sex Safari. But we brought Paul because I thought Paul would be really into it. He's been a little out of shape, I guess, in his cardio, like all of us are. I mean, not you necessarily, but everyone I've been with. And he said, I think he had a harder time with it because he got like exercise-induced asthma or something. And that was, I think Denise and I got exercise-induced rhinitis. So that was...
Did Denise have fun?
Yeah. Everyone had a pretty good time. I think Paul was happier to see Abel than the play. But that, everyone was good. I mean, I was happy to see Abel. I didn't realize how long it had been. It's still like I'm still getting back to talking to people after the hack.
Oh yeah.
And now that I have time, but it's not like I have like an infinite amount of time or anything. So it's like remembering, oh shoot, I'm supposed to I gotta reconnect with this person. There's just a lot to catch up on.
It is a lot.
And then
people are a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, and I still don't know how long my this period of peace and comfort will last.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, because we'll see how, if my contract at Airtable gets extended.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. But that not everybody needs to know about all that stuff. But it was interesting with LaserFit. Everybody was just I got a lot better, and I realized that it was because I was kind of doing something in the middle. I was neither a sniper or a ranger. There's this middle class that I feel like they haven't discovered yet.
Yeah.
So there's probably more, which is kind of cool because you can have it. It really starts to feel more like a video game when you have this when you have a class that you belong to.
I like that. Yeah.
And I feel like I discovered a new one that wasn't there.
I mean, that's what's kind of about being so new, is that you can discover weird strategies and techniques and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, with that said, I think we can move on to our main topic now.
Yes, kids.
We've caught up with that, and so I guess with in regards to kids, we were talking about a couple of things because we had, with some of the guests we have coming on, Modular Robotics. They make Cubelets, which I got for Richard's nephew to learn about robotics because he's I guess into that. He's into that kind of stuff, but doesn't necessarily know anybody who is also into it that can teach him about it a little bit. And so I got that for him for Christmas, and we messed around with it. It's really interesting because they're like magnet cubes you put together to build things. And so that's one thing. And that's like a positive aspect of technology for children. I think like a lot of stuff has gone in that direction.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's also, there are also issues which, one of the reasons I want to talk to YouTube is because of this adpocalypse thing.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the aspects of the adpocalypse, and for those who are unfamiliar, which I'm assuming you're not because we've talked about it a few times, if you don't know, it's basically YouTube's getting advertisers, or advertisers are pulling out of YouTube more frequently because they are, I guess, not happy with the content that their ads are being played on, because sometimes that content is not appropriate.
Yeah, the way it works with YouTube is that basically if you have a certain threshold, and right now it's fairly low, but that's changing pretty dramatically, but you can start trying to monetize your videos. And that's either through you having X number of lifetime views or subscribers. And what that means, they run ads before or after your videos, and you get a cut of that. Now, if you are a famous YouTuber and you happen to shoot a video of, let's say, a dead body, and YouTube will flag it for demonetization, saying that, okay, well, you're still in the program, but you just don't get money on that video. Mm-hmm. Even though they have those kind of things kicked in, because no advertiser wants their video ad playing next to a group of guys in a Nazi costume, or, next to dead bodies, or anything overly controversial. So the question is, how does YouTube keep control of the content that ads display on?
Yeah, and I think it's really more of a problem when you get into the specifics, because it's, it's not that hard to detect a Nazi symbol in a video and say, oh, there's Nazi symbols in this video, and therefore it should be demonetized. But what if there's a news program about Nazis? So it's like, it's one of those things where I think when you think about the simplicity of solving problems, if you're trying to solve a Mario level, for example, and you have all the movable space and the immovable space, you basically draw a line from Mario to the flag, and then as it passes around the object, or passes through objects, you just have to curve the line to the around the shortest way around the object so that Mario could float through it. And this is assuming that Mario can just move freely and jumps don't matter to some extent, or they really actually don't matter. But if Mario was like a car driving on a flat course, is what I'm kind of getting at. So you would know how you get from point A to point B in the quickest possible way, and that's a really easy problem to solve, computationally speaking, and for a person. But when those objects start moving and time is a factor and you start adding in all these other things, it's like that course isn't the same from second to second to second. So you have to be able to say, okay, what are the changes? What is predictable about the changes? When are those changes going to be a thing that I guess is going to complicate the path in which Mario has to take? And then there are the physics of Mario and all these other things. So when it becomes computationally more difficult. In the same way that it's more computationally difficult to say Nazis in context are okay or not okay. And the same thing goes for these creepy videos supposedly made for children. It's kind of hard to tell. But this was one aspect of the adpocalypse where kid videos were being made and they were inappropriate, and that controversy made them popular, and they were still being monetized because they were seen as kids videos by the algorithm.
Yeah, we were talking about this morning, but they're odd. They feature often like a Spider-Man or Elsa. They love Frozen cosplay for some reason. But it's like, yeah, Elsa...
you said they're from Japan, right?
They seem to be Japanese in origin, and they don't feature any language. There's like weird cartoon sound effects, and even though there's nothing quote-unquote inappropriate, visually, where if you looked each frame by frame, you'd be like, yeah, visually, there's nothing that would get this an R. But just the content is at times like mildly suggestive to being like questionable and bizarre. And the fact that it's geared towards children just made people uncomfortable because you watch them and there's an icky feeling you get when watching some of these videos. And that made headlines everywhere.
Yeah.
So Google has this giant challenge of, well, what do we do now?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I don't know. I mean, because that's the problem is everybody wants to have this solved. But it's still kind of like, how do you solve something where it would... I'm trying to think of like how even as humans we determine something like this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one end, Google's trying to keep their subscribers, happy, but ultimately they want to keep their advertisers happy because that's how they make money. So finding that balance...
Let's pretend they're even... that's the only thing they're even considering is the advertisers. What if it was... Even if it's just the advertisers, it's hard to tell, algorithmically speaking, when, what we were talking about, pushing someone off a cliff.
Yeah. So there's some weird content. I was describing one of the videos of, because I was so weirdly fascinated by these videos.
Yeah, describe the cliff one.
Basically, there's one.
That's a good
There's
example.
one I saw where you often see a theme of like Spider-Man is walking around. He notices an attractive woman, and either she's not interested in him or she's with someone else, and it's either his attempt to woo this person and failing, in some crazy way, or succeeding. Shockingly. And so he ends up seeing this couple on a beach, and I believe it's Elsa from Frozen on the beach with someone, and the guy walks, and he's watching, and Spider-Man is, of course, using his body language mimicry to show like, or not mimicry, miming skills to show I'm sad that she's with someone else. And so he watches the boyfriend go away. He is like on the beach near a cliff, and Spider-Man goes and pushes him off. And then the woman is tanning on the beach. Elsa is. And so you see this suntan lotion squirt on her, and Spider-Man gets rubbing it with his gloves are off, so he's rubbing it.
And you said the squirt looked kind of...
It looked suggestive.
Yeah, of an orgasm, just in case anyone's not getting that.
Yeah, it looked suggestive, and the way it was shot was really creepy because you see her on her stomach, like suntanning, and Spider-Man like creepily starts like approaching her, like you'd see from a perspective of like in a horror movie, and then you see the squirt on her back, and you're just like, ugh. And he begins massaging it into her, and she turns around like at first like, oh, I'm glad you're back, boyfriend, hee hee. And then she sees him and she's surprised and like covers up, even though she's not really nude, she's in an bathing outfit. So he basically like, he gestures as if the boyfriend ran away, and he's like, so I'm here now. And she's like, okay. And then they just hang out, and it works out for some reason. It's very strange, but it's not, it feels like weirdly sinister, like creepypasta stories or weird, like...
Yeah, it does feel like that a little bit.
There's a weird undercurrent. It's not just like playful cartooning. Like Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry all had, weird cartoon violence, but this has a weird sexual undercurrent that it's really hard to put your finger on. And so like to an algorithm, yeah, it looks normal. It's got cartoon character, and famous Disney characters, and nothing really quote unquote bad happens. So it's totally cool for kids. But then it wasn't as, I think it was a bit overblown. It wasn't as pervasive as I think articles made it seem. It felt like every other video was was a naughty video of some kind. But these things definitely got past the quote unquote algorithm,
Mm-hmm.
And being appropriate for kids. And that's ultimately, I think, what they were afraid of, is keeping it appropriate, because you have advertisers in the space that don't want their videos tied to this stuff.
And that makes sense, but it's also kind of weird to. I'm trying to think, like, if I'm a computer and I'm using the algorithmic abilities that I'm provided, and I'm just like with. So if you have a white splash on skin, how do you like? How do you tell the difference between a suggestive version of that and not? And so is it context within shot? How would you break this down as a human?
I mean, I would say a couple things. Like, what would be objectionable? One, like Spider-Man murdering and lusting after a character. That's just content that you can't, that's overall content. The idea of like what's someone's intent. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard, I think, for a computer to recognize that. Yeah. Which is over a series of scenes, a character's motivation. Two is the individual shots, which is there is the creepy like scene of him like approaching her as she's suntanning on her stomach, not seeing him. Again, that's something like out of a horror movie, but again, it's not. It's reminiscent of horror movies. So what would best it could reference horror movies.
It's also like hugely reminiscent of Looney Tunes or Merry Melodies.
Sure.
Because you have Pepe Le Pew, that is the aggressive rapey skunk. And then if you have the Roadrunner and the Coyote, that deals with the cliff thing. And visually speaking, these look similar and are also thematically similar in a lot of ways. They're not kind content really in terms of what would be child appropriate if we were judging in today's standards. Like I mean, I wonder if some of that stuff would be would be protested if it came out today. If there's a comparable version of Pepe Le Pew, for example. Especially very much so in today's climate.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think even the visual of like the suntan lotion on the back would be, what is it about? Like you said, white cream on skin. It's like, well, why not just white cream in general? Why not censor? Okay, well, we can't censor ice cream or whipped cream. Is it putting sour cream on a taco? Is it? So it's,
Yeah, I get what you're saying there.
So the question is, when does it realize this is appropriate versus not? Is it looking at the previous frame and knowing, okay, how is this contextualized?
Yeah.
And even if it's a reference to something bad, is that in and of itself bad?
Yeah, I mean, because it can understand cuts.
Yeah.
So it can know, like, what happened in the scene before, what happened in the scene after, or the shot after, I guess. Mm-hmm. And does that say anything about the other, about the shot in between?
Yeah.
And so that's something that I think makes sense algorithmically that could be done. It's not easy. It's something that's going to probably take a lot of time to say, like, when you sandwich a milk splash in between certain other things that are detected, this is a red flag. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is if they have humans detecting the red flags, I think that's something that they can use to build up a base of...
That's actually what I'd be curious is, like, users submitted data based on not just trolls, but real users who are saying, this feels inappropriate. And think if there's something larger that it can mine out, because there's probably things we're missing.
Yeah.
That we can't, the idea of, the classic definition that you've heard from the Supreme Court is what's pornography versus art. And the answer that was given is, like, I can't define it, but when I know when I see it. Yeah. And so the thing is, like, is there something that we are missing that we can't accurately describe that perhaps does, catch these things when you put enough of them in a sorting hat and the AI figures it out?
Yeah, and I don't want to get into this rabbit hole, but I think making that a democratic process is also flawed in a lot of ways because... ask people to vote on pornography and then get their private opinions on pornography, and they're vastly different.
Completely, especially, and then you go from, like, what age, demographic, region are you talking about? What culture are you from? Then you get into all sorts of crazy territories.
Yeah.
Are the answers public or private? Even sharing an answer, people are going to give an answer, even if they know it's going to be private and anonymized.
Yeah, I mean, this specific thing requires so much data, it's got to be... solving it and asking YouTube to be like, deal with this now is insane. It's just, they have a very hard problem. They basically, the problem is, I'm not saying this to absolve YouTube entirely. They decided, I want to make money off of this platform. Mm-hmm. I'm going to write an algorithm that'll do that. It's a very smart algorithm, but it's still an algorithm. And we as people are not good enough yet.
Yeah.
So how, to expect the algorithm to do it is a little absurd, and YouTube should get slack should be cut for YouTube through their advertisers.
Sure.
And creators should cut YouTube some slack for trying to figure out a very, very difficult problem. But at the same time, it's a problem that they chose. Mm-hmm. They decided to go into this in the same way I say Coinbase decided to go into what they went into, and dealing with all the enormous problems with the blockchain and how it functions, and trying to monetize that in a way that ends up screwing a lot of people over because they don't provide the protections that something like this should have.
Yeah. I think, in the name of saving the children, people are going to get pissed off and upset. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have. So ultimately, the effect it's had is that if you have a small subscriber count, you're basically not going to be able to make money.
Yeah.
And that was kind of their quick and dirty way of saying, how do we root out some of these more troublesome people and reduce our number of people that are making money off this, so we can keep better control of this.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is too, this when it's small subscriber count, we're talking about what is it? It's 1,000 subscribers, right?
Yeah, I think it's two things. It's lifetime views of videos and it's number of subscribers.
Yeah, you have to have 10,000 views, 1,000 subscribers, and then there has to be, I think, like 40,000 hours watched or something
like that,
over the course of each year, which is not that much. Like, I think people are reading into this as a bigger problem than it is. What YouTube is imposing in that regard, it might hurt some people who are just getting started. But if you are not meeting those minimums and you're saying, I need, I'm making a living off of YouTube, you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
You're lying.
It's really,
because I meet those minimums and I know how much money comes out of that. So it's different.
It's funny. People are delusional when they think, that they're making a lot of money off this. But I think they're afraid of not having a base that will grow. Mm-hmm. And thinking that this is going to remove that chance, because it also potentially deprioritizes your search listings and all this nonsense that they're all saying. So it's
being demonetized is more of the problem is the aggressive demonetization, not the minimums. The minimums I think are totally fine.
Yeah, and I agree. It sucks that they have to do it, but at the same time, to make content and a space that is sustainable, because it's a great platform. But I understand why they're hesitant to hemorrhage out advertisers.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, too, though, it's like they could also do ad classes. And I'm not sure why they don't have, like, AdSense text ads just thrown into the videos of the potentially garbage content, which is not... And that's not to say it's all garbage content if you don't have a lot of subscribers.
I mean, if it's not garbage content before, adding a bunch of text over it would definitely make it such.
But you put an ad class for these people where everyone can make some money off of it, potentially. But if you're going to make garbage content, then that's, what you're going to get stuck with, because you're not going to reach more people. Mm-hmm. So I think that makes more sense. If you wanted to, I guess, make things easier for everyone, but at the same time, it's like these are very small numbers. I mean, like 10,000 views, 1,000 subscribers, 40,000. I may be getting that wrong, by the way, but I'm pretty sure
those
that
numbers sound right.
It's pretty close to what it is. I think it's the number of hours I'm getting wrong, potentially.
I think you're right.
But it's somewhere around 40,000 hours a year. That statistic, if those are the metrics, it's really not that hard. We're talking about aggregate hours. There are many YouTubers who are not even that popular who have a 10-minute video, and people watch a quarter of it, and it gets enough views on that video to basically get them there. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it has to be monetized to count.
Yeah.
It's just you have to have you won't make money off of it, but I mean, like, my biggest video isn't monetized because it's a review it's not even a review, it's like a preview of the Autoblow 2, which we got sent because we interviewed the guy who made it on the Awkward podcast, and I was like, sure. And I'm not saying I didn't try it. I'm just I'm not trying to pretend that I'm above sex toys or anything, because I'm not, and I think that's a stupid opinion to have. But it's but at the time I had not tried it yet. I just wanted to do a video of like what it was really quickly so we could get something up. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then after I had tried it, that video was doing so well, I never got around to the other one. I don't remember if I just didn't have time or whatever. And we did a review of, whenever I've done reviews of sex toys, they've performed very well. The problem is you can't make money off of them.
The toys or the videos?
Well, the Autoblow did The auto blow has done really well. I don't know how the Fifi did, but the videos, I'm talking about the videos, which is your joke.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, I mean, it's really, I think it's a really interesting problem that we're stuck with right now, that it's hard to solve. And I think YouTube's going to have a hard time solving it, as anyone would have a hard time solving it, which, I'm curious how they're approaching it, which is why I want to talk to them. I've heard a lot of opinions from creators. I want to hear opinion from YouTube. And
I just wish someone would think of the children.
I think people are thinking of the children, and that's part of the problem.
Well, it's interesting because, like, obviously there's the YouTube issue, which is it's a platform that has different ways in, because they have the YouTube Kids app, and it's often a platform that is used for, obviously, pornography and anything that's considered inappropriate content is not on there. But you have just a wide platform for viewers of all ages and races and sexes and genders and affiliations. But the idea of keeping it at a sort of minimum threshold that anything on there could be appropriate for kids. The idea of adding in, warnings for violent content or anything that's considered newsworthy. So they do allow content that is not risque, but that is violent or disturbing with like these flags on it, because they still want to have this place to be important and have important videos that are, newsworthy or meaningful for history, but at the same time making sure kids can access it. So it's interesting letting people play and having to put up these walls in this space by either removing things, making sure that they don't make money to make advertisers happy, or, making them age gated or, warning gated.
I mean, I think the solution is probably saying these are the things that can be filtered, which is kind of anything. If they develop a more robust system where context can be applied and ads can be filtered out of certain, and this is part of what they're doing. I think we may have mentioned this a little bit, but I mean, a couple of weeks ago, but what is going to work, I think, is putting the responsibility on the advertisers a lot more, saying like, this is how the platform works. You're welcome to use it to advertise. We want you to do that. But here are the tiers that you can restrict your ads to. Here are the ways that you can get, I guess, some sort of, what do you call it? Like, I can't think of the word. Some sort of filter. You can use these words to filter out certain kinds of content, so your ads don't appear on anything that you might not want it to.
But even if you do that, though, which they do have a level of control for that, even if you do that, though, what happens if a video gets filtered incorrectly and your video gets attached to something you still don't want, even though you specified that you don't want it there?
Well, I mean, that's a problem. If that's a problem that YouTube has to be responsible for.
And that's what I think has happened more and more.
But I don't think the filter controls are as robust as they need to be in order to put that more on advertisers. Because if you, and it needs to also be explained very clearly to advertisers how to use it properly.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, let's say I'll use gay as an example, since I'm obviously not anti-gay. I don't want to. I figure.
I mean, you could be a self-loathing person.
Yeah, but I'm not. As a gay man, I don't have I'm not gonna be discriminatory here, but when I say some advertisers may not want their content on, or want their ads on gay content, that might not always be discriminatory for one thing. Like, for example, it would be inappropriate to say for the Red Cross to advertise blood drives on gay content, since they kind of, don't allow gay people to donate blood. That would be offensive to gay people. And so you would want to filter it out of that. Or it could be potentially offensive to gay people. That's an interesting debate, actually, on its own, because there are, that's not it gets thrown in as a bigoted thing, and I think it's too restrictive and problematic in some ways, but at the same time, you rule out risky blood groups. They don't do it as evenly as they should. If they're going to say gay people are at risk, well, there are a lot of other risk factors statistically that you could put in there that should also be filtered out that are not. But it's it's complicated, and it's not inherently bigoted. It's just a problem that when it's a problem with men, not necessarily gay men. Just happen to be, there's more men involved, so it ends up being more of a problem there. But anyway, that's an entirely other debate. It's a difficult thing to figure out. What do you want to? I mean, how strict should these filters be? And I think they need to be very, very strict and make advertisers how it needs to be a situation where advertisers are like, well, I'm not getting very many plays of my ad now because I'm filtering it out of all of this stuff. They need to say, I'm okay with being more lenient. And then when there's a problem, it's about them pulling back or not.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be a decision that is always YouTube's problem to deal with, I think.
I get that. It's interesting looking at YouTube versus a platform like Club Penguin, which, again, it's a space, but that is built specifically for kids, or it was. It's no longer in existence. Rest in peace.
What is it exactly? Because I don't really know about it.
Club Penguin was a club for kids. It basically was a kind of a massive online chat platform that you had to be a kid to use.
Okay.
You didn't have to. You could be any age, but you were limited to saying certain things. And as a parent, you had very complete controls over like what you could make your kids. So you could make it where you could only say pre-selected items or things. And it was basically like a little chat world. Imagine like a graphical representation of like what AOL used to be, which is like, here's some chat rooms and here's some spaces to go play games. Your avatars were penguins. You could change their color and get items to wear.
That sounds fun.
But it was for kids. And it was basically would ban you if you did or said anything inappropriate. And so trolls would get on there and try to do as many inappropriate things as possible.
Oh, how nice.
So it was a constant battle between trolls and the kids. And they had a number of people that were, monitoring and making sure it was a safe and appropriate place. And that everything from like never share your address, never share your name, like advice. And back when I was in my first job out here and bored, I would occasionally troll Club Penguin and just try to get banned as quickly as possible. And if you like swear, you get automatically banned.
Tommy, why would you do that?
Because I'm a monster. So what happened? I was curious at poking at the...
I hope you weren't harming any children.
No. I was just trying to get banned as quickly as possible. So if you swore, you get banned for a day.
Okay.
So if you just said like, shit.
Yeah, that I don't think is... I think that's a silly reason to... it's different in like a kid's place, but yeah, I think parents should teach their kids swear words like right away.
Knowing kids, they would start repeating them immediately.
Yeah, but you learn them in school, like it'd be like, these are appropriate words for the right situation, but you're not going to know what they are
at a certain age when they're able to distinguish those. Then you can use them.
Yeah. I think like by age 3, I learned about sex at age 3, and it was fine. And I think I learned swear words at age 5 or 6. It was in kindergarten. I don't remember what age I was when it actually happened. I remember the exact place. When I first learned about the words, I remember what it looked like, where I was adjacent to the cafeteria. I don't know how accurate that memory is.
What was the context?
Brian, my friend Brian, who I would like to say where he is now, but I don't want to potentially say something.
Is he dead?
No, he's like very successful.
Oh.
And so
I see.
I don't want to be like, this very successful person taught me about swear words.
Is it Brian Singer?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, he works for a music company. It's very impressive where he's gone with his life is all, and it's just kind of funny to think about him as the kid who corrupted my language.
Dirty background, jeez.
Yeah, and he isn't though. I mean, it's like I no way want to say anything bad about him or am intending to through saying any of this stuff. But anyway, it's popped in my head. It's like, it's fun. It's funny, like whatever you are as a kid. Not that he was ever bad as a kid, really.
He didn't murder anyone or kill.
No.
Okay, good.
But no matter what you're like as a kid, it's like what you are as an adult. It's a hard thing to predict.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think that when I learned about swear words, it was an issue of. I mean, I didn't really use them that much when I learned about them because I knew that they were bad because I was being told in secret. But if your parents tell you, like, these are... I've known parents who have done this, which is why I feel more comfortable saying it.
Yeah. Because
I don't like to give parental advice not having kids. I don't think I know. But I can say as somebody who was a kid and was raised by parents, which I guess you can say about most people, but also from parents who have gone this route, is like just exposing your kids to stuff and telling them and treating them like they're intelligent will allow them, that context, how you treat your children, how you treat people contextualizes who they are a little bit. And if you're a parent, you're doing that a lot more. So it's the sort of thing that really should not be considered small or insignificant, and we should factor it in more to the way that we act towards people and treat other people.
No, I think giving a robust education about that is valuable. Club Penguin clearly does not value that.
No, but they're in a situation where they have to be careful.
Yeah, so what they would do is they would basically censor you for a day and be like, you can't log in for a day. But my goal is to get like a lifetime ban. And so what I would do is I would make really offensive names, but I would spell them slightly different in ways that their little banned word list wouldn't detect.
In a way, you might be doing them a public service.
Exactly.
Because
I was
teaching them how to prevent you.
Exactly. And so I would walk around and I would just like immediately go like, I would ask for people's addresses, saying if I could come visit. And I would just try to like immediately get banned. And more times than not, like it would take about 10 minutes, but then I'd get banned. And if you logged in again, it would be like, you've been banned for like 9,000 years. Oh. And so they would just basically, I think...
It's a long time.
Yeah, they would basically just, clearly like toggle on the longest like number they could think of. So I think I was banned once for 99,000 years. Okay. 99,999 years. That was an achievement. And so
Does it actually last that long, or is it just kind of like some sort of...
Well, considering it's dead now, I don't think it matters anymore.
Yeah, I guess not.
So that was kind of an ongoing game, but in essence, I hope, helping them get a better system. Because I wasn't actually looking to hurt anyone. I was just curious how the system worked, and I was curious at poking at it. So clearly there were administrators that if you did get banned for something or doing anything suspicious, like if you got reported, they clearly had a human hand instigating the process. And going through and, this name is bad, this person's got bad history, let's just ban the account.
Yeah, well, what made you want to target them specifically?
I don't remember why. I think when I was bored, I was in a job I hated, and I think I read...
You still had to find out about them.
I think I read about them in a story somewhere about them having an issue with combating people online. And I don't know, I was curious. There is something about being mischievous where I don't like hurting people. And in my mind, I was hurting the system, not anyone. I knew I wasn't hurting or dealing with any of the people on it. But there's a certain troll side to me that there is some fun watching a system burn.
Yeah.
I don't know why, like poking at the edges. I've got that out of my system and learned the consequences of that, so I avoid it. But there's an impishness and like a puckishness to it. The ability of going in and messing with the system and seeing if it catches you.
Yeah. And I mean, to some extent, it can feel, I think, well, I can think of it in a couple of ways. It's like, there's one where if you feel like you're doing social justice, and maybe you are to some degree, if it's some form of civil disobedience by trying to subvert the system, or by showing somebody that they're doing something wrong and they need to change it, like not protecting kids from trolls properly by therefore being the troll in the way that hackers will hack whatever.
Yeah, like a white hat.
To be like, a white hat hacker.
And to give you a sense, like, I didn't do this a lot. I did this like 2 or 3 times ever and then stopped. Because once I realized I eventually got banned for 99,000 years, I was like, okay, and I felt satisfied.
Yeah. But it's like, it's also, I mean, it's just interesting because I've been watching that Netflix show Mindhunter, which I don't want to comment too much on because I want to see where it ends up at the end of the season.
How far are you?
Halfway, I think.
Okay.
And have you watched the whole thing? So I guess my
it's really happy.
What?
The show's really happy.
Yeah, it's upbeat. It's actually like I don't find it depressing.
It's not depressing, but there definitely is an undercurrent of
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff because it's in the 70s, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of stuff there that strikes me as not progressive enough for the kind of show it feels like it is.
Not progressive enough?
Well, there's a lot of like bigotry that comes up in the dialogue occasionally, which was appropriate for the time.
Yeah.
But it's a little confusing because the show feels like it's trying to say something about problems now.
I think it is, but it's, I think, in the lens of that era, because they're clearly progressive characters.
Yeah.
His girlfriend and, I don't know when she comes in, but Anna Torv's character.
Yeah, she comes in, I think, it's at least in episode 3,
Yeah,
if not like at the end of 2.
But then she becomes regular later in the season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, obviously the two of them I think represent.
I was very happy to see her.
Yeah, no, I really like her as an actress. I think it's a strong role for her. By the way, did you figure out what the beginning is about?
The beginning
of each episode?
Oh, the ADT guy. I don't want to say what I think on the podcast, but we should talk about it later.
I was really excited because I knew from the first scene, I'm like, I know who that is.
I don't know if I know specifically who it is, but I have an idea of what's going on.
He's from my hometown.
Oh,
it's real. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll talk about that later. But in thinking about that show, though, in terms of, I guess, the psychology of people who will go on and troll.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's interesting to... A lot of the stuff that they brought up so far through the first 4 episodes has been like, why do these killers have this different way of processing certain things?
Mm-hmm.
And so I see like instances of that in why people would do something bad, because it's nice to see the destruction of it. It's kind of fun to mess with something and get away with it.
Either take a system and get a reaction. I definitely felt a trollishness in me growing up that it wasn't about being malicious, because I don't like hurting people, and I'm super keen and aware of that. But for me, there's something about in a video game. One of my favorite instances of this was in a GTA ripoff called True Crime: Streets of LA, and then Streets of New York was the sequel. In the LA one, like, that was my first experience of driving around in LA. It's hilarious because looking at it now, it's like, oh, that's obviously not at all what it's like. But in the game, you could ignore orders, and the game would get mad at you. And you would have like Michael Madsen and certain voice actors who would be giving like, I'm a gruff policeman, I'm giving you a tutorial. And so it's like, okay, Michael, get in the car and drive. And so you're driving and I'm like plowing down pedestrians and just like ignoring the good driving rules. And, the guy's like, what the fuck? Like yelling at you. And there was something funny about getting that reaction from the game. There was one where the guy's like, okay, let's go over here. And then I ran away from him. And he's like, where are you it And I don't know, it was funny. I liked the fact that the developers acknowledged the fact that you can try to break it. And either you can fail the mission, and sometimes I would make my own personal missions where there was one guy who would chase you in a car that would seem that was invincible. The point was you had to evade him. But there was no consequence if the game was still early on in the GameCube's life cycle where there were no consequences for you ignoring the evasion. It was just the guy was chasing you and he could just keep circling you and it didn't do anything. It wasn't like a time limit. So I realized you could do a slow motion like bullet time shoot. So what I would do is I would do it and I would target the guy's tires, and you could basically stop it where the guy would not stop driving, but you could make the car slow enough that I could actually go kick him out of his car. And then I could get in the very car that I had helped destroy that I was trying to evade, and I could go get it repaired and drive around, and then the game would get really confused. Because I was in the thing I was supposed to be running away from.
Yeah.
And so you're driving along and the character that you're driving is like, or you're playing is really paranoid because the thing is right on top of him. It's like, they're right on top of me. Yeah. So it doesn't make any sense. But it was interesting watching how the idea that I could troll the game and it was fun because it was acknowledging me and I was able to find like a new sense of exploration in it. Now, trolling for the sense of being able to like hurt people or get bad reactions can sometimes give me giggles too, but I also realize that's also bad. Hurting people, getting unexpected reactions can be funny, but to the point where you're actually like toxically harassing people or, if you're in a lobby of a video game just doing something silly and not targeting anyone specific, that's one thing. But when you're harassing people, I think some people just like the reaction though. Yeah. And there's something about kids that come in this space where getting genuine reactions from kids, like they're really vulnerable to trolls. Like Club Penguin is a perfect example. Is the fact that there are kids in this curated space, or is it because people want to break the rules? Because there's something funny about, we have a kid-safe space, so saying a swear word or saying something inappropriate, like you shouldn't do that. So is it about embracing the taboo, or is it about actually going after kids? I feel like
it's seeing what happens.
Yeah.
With that, I mean, in some cases, if it's the I guess Mindhunter-esque psychology, it might be a situation where it's kind of it is about hurting kids, but not about hurting a specific kid so much as like acting out a fantasy and fantasy is not. I'm using that in the psychology context, not in the like fantasy.
Oh, like knights and sword and sorcery,
or necessarily a positive thing, like a fantasy that could be
a negative.
Yeah, it's something you imagine in your head.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing, and if that's what we're dealing with here, then there may be people that come in maliciously, but their motivation for doing it may be. I mean, what is discovered in Mindhunter, I don't know how the rest of the series goes, but psychology from the 70s wasn't exactly complete. Mm-hmm. So saying that like we can derive a motivation from every, sequence killer, as they're currently saying in the show. I don't know if they make it to serial by the end.
Eventually.
But that was an interesting thing I didn't know about. But if we're talking about the psychology in that regard, then that's a different problem to solve than the problem of people just trying to help the system by pointing out the flaws or by just trying to mess with something because
I think it's
without trying to hurt anybody.
I think it's also about a little element of control, and any environment where kids are going to be around that's curated is going to have control. Mm-hmm. And so people are like, oh, you want to have control over the space? Well, we'll show you can't. It's eyeing the thumb, it's thumbing your nose at authority. Mm-hmm. Where anywhere they try to basically create an environment where, and then kids, that's a space where oftentimes you are seeing curated environments. I mean, look at the tech, like there was a doll that had a Bluetooth hookup that was super insecure. Mm-hmm. Where anyone in the area could connect to this doll and say horrible things to your kids.
God, that would be a tempting one.
And that thing is like, that's kind of funny. Like the idea of surprising a family that has an insecure Bluetooth connection nearby that wouldn't know it was you, and you hook up to the bear and you're like, hey, Timmy, go burn down the house, and just say ridiculous things.
I find it tempting to broadcast to my neighbors sometimes because a lot of people leave stuff open. But part of the problem for me in doing that is not knowing who's getting it. Like, I want to know who I'm doing it to.
Yeah, the receiving end, not just a weird... There was a really weird thing when I was in college where I had these... I thought it was super cool because I had wireless headphones and I could wear them, and they picked up, because they transmitted over radio frequency, I could pick up on certain bands wireless handsets. Mm-hmm. And so I could hear people having phone conversations in the dorm. It was really weird because, there were certain headsets that were tuned to the frequency, and I could just hear what people were saying. I couldn't hear both ends. I could only hear the end that was broadcasting to the base station and not back. So I would always hear one end of a conversation. But it was weird. Interesting. Yeah, it was very strange. And I hated doing it because at first it was interesting, but then it's like, okay, this is annoying now.
Yeah. Technology is weird because we want to have this level of control, and we expect this level of control over it that's not really possible in a lot of ways, because if you just think about the entire situation when it comes to technology and how we deal with stuff as people, we don't agree on most things. I mean, we can agree on some stuff, like it's not okay to murder people except in certain situations like war, but then that gets muddy as well. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like generally we can agree on some version of the 10 Commandments maybe.
Or even like this is the Golden Rule or something.
Yeah, but I mean, like even I wouldn't agree with the Golden Rule. So I would augment the Golden Rule because I don't think it makes sense to do unto others as you would do unto yourself if stuff you would do unto yourself or that you'd want people to do to you, I guess is better phrasing, perhaps. Not to, sorry Bible people if that bothers you.
Well, is the Golden Rule in the Bible?
Isn't it?
I don't know.
It's always something touted by religious people. Maybe I just assumed that. I don't know why I think that.
I feel like it's a distillation of what most religious texts treat people or tell people to treat others as.
But either way, it's observed by plenty of religious people, so I think we can associate it safely.
And most of their rules that kind of boil down into that. So yeah.
So with that in mind though, I mean, like I wouldn't agree with the Golden Rule outright because I think there are things that how I would want to be treated in a certain situation would be terrible for people I care about.
Yeah.
And so like it's a good rule when you don't know what else to do. But if you have any other information that would say it's not right in this case, then you have to augment that.
Yes.
And so I think like it's a good starting point, but then we have to figure out the details, and that's when the system gets too complex. It's again another computationally difficult problem that in this case is a social computation, so to speak, for people. And I know I as much as I am comfortable personally likening people to machines, I know a lot of people don't like that. So when I'm saying computationally, I'm not saying that to necessarily imply that people are predictable machines, regardless of what I may think. But at the same time, I'm trying to say that a computation is more of like a problem solving thing. And we're talking about something consistent. We are pattern recognizers. We mimic each other. These are things that we know about people. And so, a human computation is different from a calculator. But we used to call people calculators before, there were calculators to do what they do. And so now we have nicer or different, I guess not nicer, but different terms for people. But it's not to imply that we're machines, even though I'm perfectly happy to do that.
We're organic flesh machines.
Yeah, I do think that. I think that there's a higher probability that we are a machine that is predictable, not in the robotic sense, but
we have a registry in our brain of different programming that we make these organic decisions that are programmed, but yeah.
So I think in terms of like kid-safe technology, it's really hard to determine as people what that means.
Well, when you add
we teach a machine,
and when you add in the element of online interactions and cloud interactions, that makes it even more complicated. Yeah. Because the simplest toy you can give a kid that's safe is just a generic block that has no context whatsoever. But then can the kid murder someone with that block? Can the kid hurt him or herself with that block? So yeah, it's challenging. And I think now with technology being used to create really crazy gadgets for kids, every time you add some dimension of online interactions or things that can be co-opted by, a bad actor, like a Bluetooth hijacking exploit for a doll. It's not even an exploit. It's just a poorly secured device that accepts open Bluetooth connections.
Which should be okay. Like we shouldn't need to put that much effort into it. And personally, I'd rather have an open Bluetooth connection that just says, as long as I'm paired with something, don't pair with anything else. That would be okay with me, because then it would block stuff, and then I don't have to have the inconvenience of entering a key.
But what happens if you walk out of the room, it disconnects, and someone's watching and is like, okay, well, the kid's alone, I'm going to...
Oh, no, paired, not connected. It can only be paired with one thing.
Until you...
Okay. Or there's some sort of like, maybe once you're paired, you can manage how many other devices can pair with it and allow it. I'd rather do it that way than have the inconvenience of having to type in a key somehow.
Sure.
Although if it's the doll where it's just like push in the doll's mouth, then the ear, then the eyeball, then I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of fun.
That's better. That's more fun.
I think it's just like, with Bluetooth keyboards, I hate pairing. Like I pranked someone once at work with a Bluetooth keyboard.
Funny.
By pairing it with my computer while they were at lunch as well. And then I would just, or I paired their computer with my keyboard or something. I can't remember what I did, but I did something with keyboards and Bluetooth that let me type for them.
I did that for one of my old coworkers had a wired mouse, and I had a Bluetooth one I hooked up to his computer. So you could do both at the same time. But occasionally I would just it was next to my desk, and occasionally when he was working, I'd just take it and he would just be like, what the hell? Yeah.
And then they started to suspect it with me at one point, but I had it on a KVM. So I would just swap it over whenever they would be like, hey, what's going on? And I'd be like, try it.
That's smart.
So that was, I told them, this went on for like 10 minutes, and then I told them it was something like that. But in fact, I don't think Mikey's been on any of the shows, because I was pranking him. But
that's very amusing.
But if he is, I'll hopefully remember this when he's on.
This was the same guy I pranked at work who I got someone to record a message for him who didn't know it was a joke. And they wrote in the note that there was a Mr. BAER who called for him, and it gave a phone number. So he calls it back, and it's the LA Zoo, and he was calling asking for Mr. Bear. Oh. So it's only when he's like, I'm looking for Mr. Bear, and the zoo person's like, excuse me? It's like, yeah, I got a phone message to call back for Mr. Bear. Like, where is this again? She's like, this is the LA Zoo. And he's like, oh. And he knew immediately it was a joke.
Yeah. But that's a good prank, though, because it doesn't go on for too long.
Yeah, it was quick. And just his reaction when he actually called the LA Zoo and asked for Mr. Bear, that made me very happy.
Yeah. Okay, so before we wrap it up today, I think we should talk about the Nintendo Labo.
And actually, that's an interesting aspect of tying into the conversation, because it's trying to use something that's for kids, that's safe, that allows and encourages creative play with a Nintendo system, and doesn't really have, for what I can tell, like online or crossplay.
Yeah, do you want to describe it really quick for
so the
people who
Nintendo
don't
Labo,
understand it, even if they've seen it?
It's basically a series of cardboard objects you can build that then you can incorporate the Switch Joy-Cons, which are the little controllers that slide off the Switch, and it does different features where they obviously have sensors in them that can share information to the Switch and the data. So you have like a little fishing rod you can make, and it's got a string, and you can simulate going fishing on the game using the fishing rod. Or my favorite aspects are ones where you have like a little man or a grasshopper or a little cart that utilize the vibration mechanisms for the Joy-Cons to actually move, which is really clever. And it's cardboard, and it's you kind of paper dolling it, where you cut it out and, fold it and bend it and secure it in place, and you can color it and decorate it and do tape to secure it. But it's interesting because it allows you to experiment and design and create your own aspect of something, which is kind of interesting. They did a high-tech solution, which is the Switch. Nintendo is known for using low-tech parts in really clever ways. Yeah. So the idea that it's utilizing the lowest tech possible, cardboard and markers, with a game that's built to deliberately use those little pieces. So it's cool because it doesn't mean making these accessories that are expensive. It means accessories you can buy in a kit and make yourself.
Yeah, I think it's the cost aspect of it that's particularly interesting too, because it's not something that Nintendo has traditionally done, keep the cost of their accessories cheap, and this way a lot of things can be made. But the problem with something like that is, how I don't know if I can even think of a reason or a method at this point, but how can these things be hacked and made into something inappropriate? What if there is a version of one thing that gets turned into a penis, but even if it is, how do you have to disseminate it yourself? It's not going to be hacking the software itself. It's going to be, if you want to break it yourself, you can do it, but it's not going to disseminate it out to everyone else. Yeah, but if you created a version that people could buy that was a penis, that was the same as something else that made a really inappropriate version, maybe it shows up on YouTube. Kids are searching for a Nintendo Labo instruction kit, and they find how to turn the robot backpack into a penis and vagina demonstrate. I'm trying to think of ways the system could be corrupted.
But then the system, obviously, that's all based on search results and algorithms that are already going to filter that stuff out, probably.
Probably, but it didn't get it on the Japanese videos on YouTube, and so if people find a way to name it that tricks people,
if it's tricky with a name,
if people are deliberately trying to hide it, then that's where they could hide that into a normal tutorial.
But that's something that I don't think Nintendo would worry about as much, because they can't control that. It's you. That's you. No. You're searching outside of their walled garden.
Yeah, of course.
It is, as long as you're in our garden, you're safe.
Yeah, and so it really becomes a problem as we create systems where people have to interoperate, that it becomes an issue. So the problem, though, then becomes if Nintendo feels the need to release the videos on YouTube, and also Nintendo has a monetization deal where they take half. If someone's making something with Labo and showing game footage, and Nintendo's monetizing the penis video, then that creates a YouTube situation where it is problematic for them.
It does.
So there are a lot of ways these things can be corrupted, and as long as this behavior is happening, we have to ask the question, I think, of how can this be managed? How can we make sure that it is not caught? How can it be done algorithmically, because it can't be done with humans? It's just too much to stay on top of. So is the problem trying to prevent things, which has long been not the answer to a lot of technology issues? You just get steamrolled eventually. It may be a slow death at that. Or do we figure out how to, educate kids better? And is that the actual solution to it?
I think it's multi-solutions. Nothing's going to solve everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we do have to make some effort to prevent kids from seeing very explicit bad things. But if they see things that are not necessarily appropriate, but miss our filters, which a lot of these things could easily miss a parent filter if they're not fully paying attention. Yeah. Or even if they're watching the whole thing and just, their mind's somewhere else. A parent could totally miss some of the video you described, for example.
That's why I think it's a combination of multiple things, of having strong algorithms that protect this, of having educated parents that know how to watch what their kids are doing, and educating kids about how to avoid stuff, but also not entice them to say, like, kids, don't look at this, and they're going to look at it.
Yeah. So ultimately, we need to really have a lot of education and people, talking together about how to solve these problems.
Or just stop having kids and let the human race die out like it should.
Well, I mean,
but
it'll happen on its own.
Eventually, or we'll just die in a fiery nuclear blast that destroys everyone.
Well, on that note, it seems like a great place to end the episode.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks, everybody, for listening or watching, I guess, if you're watching now. If you're not, don't forget, you can go to youtube.com/awkwardhuman, I think, or awkwardhsg. I can't remember what we ended up being. But if you search for Supercharged episode number 185 on YouTube, you'll find it. You also can go to the show notes on 5by5.tv/supercharged/185, and you'll find the video actually there if you want to watch it there. We haven't figured out how to get, because this requires some hosting stuff as well. We haven't figured out exactly how to do a video version of the podcast as well, so you can get it, so you can subscribe to that instead of the audio if you'd prefer to get it through a podcatcher. But you can listen same way you always have, and you can definitely do the...
I can subscribe to YouTube videos on my stuff.
Pocket as a podcast?
Yeah, Pocket Cast lets you.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll just make a playlist on YouTube, and then I should be doing that anyway. So we'll figure that out maybe in a later episode. But don't forget too that despite that we haven't updated all the intros and outros appropriately for the shows that have video now, you can go to awkwardhuman.com/supercharged to participate in the show. We have that working. I don't think anyone really knows about it yet because we've just started posting those episodes. So if you're watching, you can see that on your screen right now. But do go to awkwardhuman.com/supercharged, submit a news story, submit a question, submit a recommendation, and we're going to get to doing those more frequently. I'm still building up components of it, but if we do get submissions from you, we will absolutely feature those in the episodes. It's more of for our part, we need to get the host part of making sure those recommendations get logged and episodes are set up accordingly. But right now I'm focusing on getting some big guests in because I think that will be a lot of fun for everybody rather than us just recommending an app. So anyway, that's all the business for today and the topic for today. Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you next week. Thanks for listening to this episode of Supercharged. If you'd like to send in a comment or a question, you can do so on awkward.email. You just go on your web browser to awkward.email. It's actually a website. And you can call or text 509-AWKWARD instead if you'd like to just skip all of that and do it from your phone. Also, if you'd like to check out some of our other shows, we've got a lot of great shows now, and we're having more every day, or, eventually. You can do that on awkwardhuman.com/podcast. Go check it out. We've got a lot of good stuff, and we hope that you'll be listening every week. Thanks.